The drill assessor's name was Vaethoris, and the first thing he said on intake morning was that 60 years was a long time to hold a record. He didn't say it like a boast. He said it the way a man reads from a maintenance log. Flat, factual, mildly bored. The yard record at Vaethoris Combined Arms Academy stood at 4 hours and 11 minutes, set by a Vaethian cadet named Sorvith Al, class of 7 cycles prior to mine. Vorith had been the drill assessor for 4 of those cycles. He said the record had not been approached in the last 2. The reason, he said, is simple. Cadets split their resources. He was standing at the edge of the observation platform, chitinous plates shifting across his shoulders as he scanned the line of us. His jaw glands, the bioluminescent ones banked in rows below the mandible, were running a steady amber. That meant he was assessing. I'd learned that much in the first week. Amber meant he was building a model of you in his head. The yard is adaptive, he continued. It reads your solution and counters it. The only way through is to commit to a single line of approach, early, cleanly, and without deviation. Cadets who split their resources give the yard 2 targets instead of 1. It kills both, every time. I looked at the yard from where I was standing. 600 meters of variable terrain, wall sections, water obstacles, equipment stations, open ground. I'd run training versions of it 4 times. I knew roughly what the phases did. Phase 1 was a logistics problem. You had to move materials from 4 scattered caches to a central point, with the yard introducing access failures as you worked. The solution the training runs wanted was prioritization. Pick the nearest, most accessible cache, extract it fully, move to the next. I had never done it that way. I'd pulled partials from all 4 simultaneously, keeping all routes half-open, rotating pressure so the yard's access failures couldn't seal any one of them before I had enough. The training console had flagged my approach as anomalous twice. Vorith had looked at the flag, looked at my time, and written something down. He hadn't said anything, he said something now. The full group of us, 14 cadets, 12 alien, 2 human, and by human I mean me and a girl named Cassell who'd washed from the program 3 days later with a shoulder injury. He addressed us as a unit, but his amber glands were aimed at me for the last 4 words. Commit to a line, he said, or the yard commits for you. I started at 0800. Phase 1 opened the way it always did, 4 cache points lighting up on the terrain map in my earpiece. Access routes, marked, a 30-second window before the yard's first countermeasure cycle. Every other cadet in the history of the record, according to the intake briefing, had picked a cache within the first 20 seconds and driven hard at it. I didn't pick. I moved toward the center of the terrain and split myself into 4 partial approaches. The yard responded the way it always did to a split. It failed 2 of the 4 access routes simultaneously, cutting off the eastern cache and the northern one. Standard counter. If I'd been fully committed to either, that would have been an extraction loss. But I was only partially in. Pulled back from both failed routes. 2-3 steps. Held the partial extractions I'd already made, and redistributed pressure to the western and southern caches, which were now both open. The yard system expected me to chase the open routes fully. Instead, I held a thread on the failed northern route, watching the cycle timer in my head. Access failures at Vaethoris, recycled on a 22-second counter. At 18 seconds, I nudged pressure back toward the north. At 22, the route reopened. I had a partial extraction already in motion before the yard registered I was there. That was the thing about the yard's adaptive system. It was very good at sealing committed lines. It was not designed for a target that was never fully anywhere. Phase 1 cleared in 46 minutes. The record phase split. According to the briefing data I'd memorized was 51. I was 5 minutes ahead. I knew that wouldn't last. Phase 2 was the wall sectional. A sequence of physical obstacles with equipment requirements that changed as you moved through them. The design solution was load management. Identify your equipment needs for the full sequence in advance. Carry what you needed. Cache what you didn't. Every cadet who held good Phase 2 times had done exactly that. Planned ahead, loaded efficiently, moved clean. I didn't plan the full sequence. I carried less than the recommended load and moved faster, pulling makeshift solutions from the environment at each obstacle. A wall segment used as a lever here, a water feed line repurposed as a rope there. The yard's adaptive layer watched me improvise and started shifting the obstacle parameters to counter the specific improvised solutions. It couldn't. I wasn't repeating them. Every obstacle got a different approach because I had less equipment and more time than the cadets who'd planned. I was never committed to a specific tool. The yard kept generating counters to solutions I'd already abandoned. I came out of Phase 2 in 1 hour and 9 minutes. The record split was 1 hour and 22. I was 13 minutes ahead of the record pace, was tired in the specific way that deep terrain work makes you tired, and I had 4 phases left. Phase 3 hit me with the water obstacle and a coordination problem. Materials that needed to cross a 100-meter flooded section meant rated for partial submersion only, a current that ran across the direct line. The design solution was a staged relay, cross with partial loads, cache at midpoints, recover. The current was variable. The yard modulated it based on your observed crossing pattern. If you went straight, it pushed laterally. If you angled, it shifted to block the angle. I went in 3 directions at once. Not metaphorically. I staged 2 dummy approaches, partial movements in 2 incorrect vectors, while running the actual extraction on a 3rd line at reduced depth. The current followed the dummy approaches. I was through the flooded section in 11 minutes. The record split for Phase 3 was 17. When I came out of the water on the far side and checked the console readout clipped to my wrist, I saw something I hadn't expected. The scoring column for my session had a flag I didn't recognize, a yellow indicator I hadn't seen in any training run. I'd been in the program long enough to know what red flags meant. Extraction failure. What orange meant. Route deviation. Blue meant time penalty. Yellow wasn't in the intake briefing. I kept moving. Phase 4 was the equipment station. Fabrication under pressure. Build something functional from a constrained part set, with the yard introducing parts failures as you worked. The design solution was linear. Assess the parts, design a solution, build it. The yard's failures were timed to interrupt mid-build, forcing improvisation at the worst moment. I didn't design first. I started building 3 partial structures simultaneously. Different approaches to the same functional requirement. Letting the yard's failure, cycles hit incomplete structures rather than finished ones. When the yard failed a component in structure A, I'd already pulled the equivalent from structure B. When it failed the equivalent in B, I cannibalized both into a consolidated C that was 3/4 done before the yard registered I had a single build in progress. The phase cleared in 28 minutes. Record split 41. At the entry to Phase 5, I stopped for 30 seconds. Not because I needed to. 'Cause the yard had gone quiet in a way that felt different from the natural reset between phases. The adaptive layer had a sound to it, a faint cycling hum from the terrain systems. And for the first time since 0800, I couldn't hear it. I looked back at the observer platform. Vaethoris Yard was not on it. I found him 40 meters into Phase 5, standing at the edge of the terrain feature with his scoring tablet under one arm, and his jaw glands running something I hadn't seen before. Not amber. Not the white-blue that meant threat assessment. Not the pale gray that meant neutrality. They were running a deep, even green. I would learn later when I looked it up that green in Vaethian bioluminescent signaling meant something close to what humans mean by the word study. Not observation, not evaluation. Something more like, I want to understand what I am looking at. He didn't speak. He walked with me. Phase 5 was the open ground problem. The longest phase. The one that wore down cadets who'd spent everything on phases 1 through 4. It was a distance problem, combined with a load problem, combined with an adaptively hostile terrain layer that could alter ground conditions, wind, visibility, and equipment weight ratings in real time. The design solution was pure pacing, resource conservation, steady split-efficient movement. No bursts. I moved the way I always move in open terrain. Not fast, not slow, distributed. I held pressure in multiple directions simultaneously, not sprinting any one of them, not abandoning any of them. When the yard shifted ground conditions ahead of me, I was never fully committed to the vector it hit. When it altered the wind, I'd already been working crosswind by habit. When it dropped the weight ratings on my primary carry lines, I'd already distributed the load across 3 secondaries. Vaethoris walked beside me and did not write anything for the first 20 minutes. Then he wrote something. I didn't ask what. I kept moving. The final checkpoint registered at 3 hours and 54 minutes, 17 minutes inside the record. There was no announcement. The terrain systems cycled down the way they always did at completion, the ambient hum dropping in stages. I stood at the final station and looked at my wrist console. The scoring column was still running the yellow flag. The time field had populated. The total time field had populated. The column marked solution architecture. The one that logged which recognized approach a cadet had used was blank. Voreth came to stand beside. His jaw glands were still green. You split your resources, he said. Yes. Every phase. Yes. He looked at the blank column on my wrist console, then at the time field, then at the terrain behind us. The yard was resetting. Panels folding back, water levels adjusting, equipment stations cycling to neutral. It did this after every run. It had been doing it for 60 years. The system has no name for what you did, he said. I waited. I will have to build one, he said. He didn't say it like a complaint. He said it the way a man reads from a maintenance log, flat, factual, and somewhere underneath the flatness, something that was not quite surprise and not quite satisfaction. Something that would take time to name. I understood that. Some things need a new column before you can file them. I walked to the equipment return station and began stripping my gear. Voreth stood at the edge of the yard for a long time, looking at the blank column on his tablet, and the green in his jaw glands did not change.